Hello and welcome to GM Prep Episode 3. My name is Mark, and this is for Blades in the Dark. And just as a real quick thing, like right up front, spoilers! Spoilers! You should not watch this if you haven't watched the actual episodes, because one, it'll make no sense, and two, you're ruining the story. Not sure there's a story yet, but, we're getting there. Another technical thing is my webcam hates me and Skype hates me. Everything hates me. So my camera just keeps randomly dropping. I'll try to keep an eye on it. I've got my other monitor over here. It's actually my laptop, secret. And so I'll try to keep an eye on that and make sure that the camera is back up or is working. But if it does go down, just yell at me in the chat or just look at my wall, I guess, for the video until I notice it again. Yeah. That's all you can do. All right, so session 2 was mostly downtime. They started their score at the end and it went a little sideways, but that's what scores do. So they will continue that next time. I don't know that I was feeling that episode necessarily. Like, it wasn't bad. I just don't know. I turned off the computer at the end and it was just kind of like, I don't know if I just didn't get enough sleep the night before or what was going on, but I'm just not sure it was a super good one. I don't know. But that's all right. These things happen. It's easy to fix the next time. Just get a good night's sleep and eat well and take care of yourself, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that I just wasn't quite feeling was that some of the NPCs felt a little blah to me, and I think that's because the vice purveyors in the book don't necessarily have like the personality things listed next to them, like some of the other. In fact, all the other NPCs that the book mentions do that. And so I probably should have, just rolled on some random charts before the game started. And I did look at everybody's like contacts and everything just to have a good idea of who they might be calling on, so I wouldn't be, like surprised or something. But sometimes, I don't know, I just sort of felt like some of them didn't quite get there. Some of them did. I thought some of them worked pretty well, but some of them were just, I don't know. And then my other thing was the thing that I was thinking about at the end once the score actually started. And I went back and watched this just to sort of make sure. But I did follow all the rules and it all sort of made sense. But it felt a little madcap to me. Like, just, I don't know. It wasn't quite the tone I was going for, maybe. But yeah, so what sort of happened at the end was, they were trying to mug a reporter played by Kristen Bell. My players decided for some reason, probably because she's a famous reporter. So they were trying to mug her, and of course things didn't go great. What happened was on their engagement roll they got a risky starting position. So I decided that meant that there were bluecoats, wandering around. And it was just sort of because they couldn't necessarily plan when they were going to mug her. It was up to when she left to go meet with the Chief Helker, who was the dock worker. And so I just decided, yeah, there's bluecoats around. And so of course, on their first couple rolls, they rolled, they got a couple minor consequences. And so I tried to do the soft move, hard move thing from Apocalypse World games, which isn't necessarily terminology in this game, but it follows the same structure. And, the soft move was, hey, the bluecoats are looking at you. There's a bit of a disturbance and they're looking at you. And then the hard move was, the bluecoats come over to you. So I thought that worked. I just thought, and maybe it was just the PCs couldn't figure out how to get out of it necessarily. But maybe that was the issue. I'm not sure. And I know we screwed up one thing where Shane Vaughn used his fine cover identity to like put on a fake mustache and stuff. And then afterwards, I was looking in the book and I was like, oh, a cover identity is like an ID, not a disguise. That's a totally different thing that someone else has. So, I mean, whatever. He had a disguise kit with him instead of an identity kit. That's all fine. So maybe that was what gave it that weird thing. And then the other thing that I was thinking about was, why did I make Edlund roll? Because he decided to start a fire to distract people. And I had him roll, and then it went bad for him, and so the Bluecoats came over, and then he ended up getting arrested because he chose not to resist the consequence of being arrested, which is cool. That's fine. But it was a little odd that I made him roll. I couldn't figure out why I did that, because honestly, it really just sounded like he was doing either a setup action or he was just aiding Vond in escaping. So, yeah, probably should have done that. Mistake. Oh, well. I guess we'll learn. But the good news is that earlier, Edlund overindulged in his vice, and he chose extra entanglement. And we rolled on the extra entanglement chart, and the first one didn't apply to their gang because it was one of their cohorts gets roughed up, or there's gang trouble, and they don't have a gang. They don't really have any cohorts yet, and so we just kind of went, oh well, I guess you got away with it. But what I forgot to notice, because I looked very quickly, was that it's gang trouble or questioning. And so questioning is usually the Bluecoats bring in one of your contacts. And then there's like some heat, or you could pay off the Bluecoats, just sort of depending. But since he ended up getting arrested at the end of the game, and we rolled questioning earlier, and we sort of skipped it entirely, I've decided to just actually change that entanglement to an interrogation, because he will be in jail. So that's how I'm fixing that. Not a big deal. I don't think that his entanglement didn't like super pay off that session, but that's all right. I mean, we can sort of twist it to work. So what does that mean for the story? I think that means that I actually need to detail that NPC that their contact LaRose and the Bluecoats was talking about earlier. It was just his higher up internal affairs, just sort of, random. It was actually, I think the entanglement I rolled was gang trouble, I think, actually, in order to do that. And he just, paid off his superior or whatever. So Edlund will be, normally it would just be, they throw him in the drunk tank for the night, because why are you starting fires in the middle of the city, you crazy person? It's fairly easy to just chalk that up to, oh, I was drunk or whatever. So I wasn't planning any, serious repercussions from that. But I think if we go with the questioning route instead, I will need to detail that NPC, and have him come in and question him, not necessarily about their activities, but about LaRose's activities, and see how that plays out, because that could be interesting. Getting into sort of an internal Bluecoats war, sort of like the first season of Person of Interest, in a odd way. So that's what I think is going to happen with that. And I will probably just roll on these cool random charts and figure out some stuff there. But hey, let's take a look at some other stuff. Look at that. Look at that. I've updated it. Woo. Relationship maps. The big changes was I added Elder Cardera, because they have started to look for a contact in the church that they can work with, which we will go back to in a moment. And then I added Chief Helker and Loria being the Inkrake journalist that they mugged. Because after the game, two of my players came up to me. So they spoke to me over Skype is what they did. But they came up to me and they said, hey, once this all blows over, I want to try to get her as a contact, or I want to try to talk to her and, make friends and all that sort of stuff. So they're obviously interested in that. So we'll have to work them back in, definitely. So I made sure to add her so that we can, definitely connect some lines to her when we get to it. But yeah, she is a member of the Ink Rakes. And then I also added Chief Helker, who was their informant that Lori was actually going to meet before she got accosted by some people and mugged. So yeah, that's really what I've added to this particular relationship map. Okay, what was the other thing? Oh yeah, let's take a look at the factions, because I actually forgot to do that in the last prep video, and in between filming that and actually running the game, I did change the red sashes to a 2 or a -2 because they did, break into their facility and kill someone who they were supposed to protect. So they are not fond of them. But let's talk about what we should change after episode 2. And I've been debating this ever since I ran, and I still haven't quite decided. So if anybody wants to weigh in, you can probably influence me fairly easily that way, because I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to do here. Do they go to war with the Ink Rakes, or does their faction just get worse with the Ink Rakes? I can't decide. It's gonna get worse because they were already not friends. The Ink Rakes were printing articles about burglary and theft and how it was a big problem in the city. And that was the -1 faction that they had. They were not specifically targeting the PCs and their crew, but kind of, they were. So, but then they've stolen, or they will have stolen, assuming things go well, some of the Ink Rakes informants. And to make it even worse, they accosted one of their own reporters and stole her money. Like, the PCs just went right up to the Ink Rakes and just punched them right in the face. And so I can't decide if the Ink Rakes are at war with them or not, or just the situation has gotten worse. I'm leaning towards situation getting worse, just making it -2. And then what I will probably do is do a clock for the Ink Rakes of trying to find the Baker Boys. We haven't decided on the name yet, but they're behind a bakery. So yeah, I'm thinking I might just do that. Make a clock for the Ink Rakes finding their hideout. What the Ink Rakes do with that information would be, the next step. That would probably be a minus when they're at -3. But that's what I'm thinking from the -2. And that was sort of my issue, was I couldn't think of a good -3. Like, you're at war with the newspaper. Like, what does that look like? What does that, is it like Newsies where they're like singing and dancing in the streets against you? Like, what's going on? So I might just go with the -2, just because I have the idea of just doing a clock of, they've got all their informants on the street and they're looking for the PCs, trying to find them. And then I'll just do, sort of, probably like prowl rolls when they go out and do downtime actions, just to see if they're followed or caught or seen or whatever. So that's, I'm gonna do that now. I'm just gonna change it, but I could be convinced to go to -3 against the Ink Rakes. I think if they just taken the informants from the Ink Rakes, that's definitely a -2. Like, hey, what the hell? But actually, mugging one of the reporters, like, what? You just don't do that. But see, and here I go, changing my mind maybe. two of my PCs definitely want to be friends with this reporter, and that's really hard to do when you're at war. So I don't necessarily want to like just close that avenue off, but does it make it more interesting because they're at war and their forbidden love? I don't know that it's forbidden love, but it definitely drives a little tension, if you're at war and also try to make friends with somebody. So, yeah. I think that's all the factions that actually changed. Because it was downtime, they didn't necessarily get involved with a lot of other people. They didn't run any other jobs against anybody else or anything. But two things to keep in mind from this chart. We've got the red sashes at -2 and the ink rakes at -2, maybe -3. So I definitely think next time I want to throw in a complication from either the red sashes or the ink rakes. Maybe both, just depending. If I go with the clock for the ink rakes, that's sort of a good background, complication. And so it'll definitely be the red sashes that strike at them. The red sashes are a little busy with their war, but they could probably spare some time. And I do have some red sash ideas, obviously. I threw them in as the enemy faction initially, just because I did have a couple ideas. So it'd be nice not to abandon my hard work. It wasn't that hard. So that is my thought, is I will definitely probably try to have some complications from the red sashes and the ink rakes next session, because next session, the first part of the session should be the rest of that score, assuming that goes okay. And I don't see any giant complications in the way of that necessarily. I may roll on the complication chart. In fact, do I have the complication chart open? I think I do. Where is it? There it is. Wait, you don't see it. There it is. Yeah, I could just roll in this, twist or complication chart just to see something. In fact, you know what? I'm just gonna pick up this little die here I have, and I'm gonna roll it. And I rolled a 4. I don't know if you can see that. And that gives me, at least on the first chart, rogue spirits haunt the location, which is interesting. Could do something with that. I sort of want to have those complications in mind, just because it wasn't like the first session where they rolled nothing but 6s. They got some consequences, and I felt a little bit like I was having some issues thinking of consequences at the time. I mean, I think the blue coats soft move, hard move thing worked, but I remember at the time I was trying to think of like which rolls they needed to make, because I was attempting to prompt them to come up with their own skills and name their own skills, which they didn't bite at. So I just kept sort of like having big blank spaces where I wasn't saying anything, hoping that they would go, "Is that a prowl roll?" Didn't work. So, but I was like in that mindset of like skills, and then suddenly they rolled a complication, and I'm like, just staring blankly at my camera. I think it all worked out okay. I felt that was another like issue, and maybe that was just a mental issue, like it wasn't even noticeable, but what was I even saying? So yeah, I know what I was saying. I was saying that, just as a background idea for some complications to throw in if things do go terrible. Doesn't necessarily make sense that rogue spirits would haunt the location of "we want you to work for us." Like that's that's essentially what they're trying to do with this job. But we can work something in. Especially considering that they were also kind of not complaining, but kind of wondering what to do with some of the arcane stuff that was thrown in there. Particularly Preceptor Dunville. They were very not sure what to do. How to work with someone who has weird ideas about ascension and demons and ghosts when they're not really demon ghosty people with this particular gang, which is cool. It doesn't have to be a supernatural game in any way. I'm cool with going whichever way they want to go. So something that came about, and I'll show you this because it is something I definitely wanted to check. What clocks do they have going on? What do I need to think about that might end up ending soon? Edlund, of course, has the Colburn papers that he is investigating on Dunville. I don't know what that means when it finishes at this point. Obviously Colburn was following him to assassinate him. It's mostly just his movements and things like that. I mean, that's the basics. But really, I'm thinking at the end of that clock, we should have a good idea of what Dunville was up to and why Penderin wanted him dead. I don't know the answer to that quite. I definitely know it's something with Ascension. I'm thinking, generic, just go with a demon summoning. There are some cool charts in this game. I think they're somewhere over there on the left. About to make up random demon lords or whatever. It seems a little, not boring, but it seems a little pedestrian for Preceptor Dunville, a tier 4 super guy in the church, to just be summoning a demon. Like, there should be a little twist to it, a little stank on it. You need to put a little stank on that somehow. Not sure yet how yet. That's something I'm still contemplating. But I need to keep an eye on that because that clock could fill up next time I run. So I need to have some sort of answer, or at least a direction to point in. So that's Edlund's clock. Timothy has a clock as well. Yeah, he is trying to recruit Lord Penderin. And I didn't think about this at the time in the game because I was just like, yeah, definitely do that. That's awesome. But then afterwards I was thinking about it and it's like, okay, Lord Penderin is a big deal. He's tier 4, tier 5. I even forget which tier he is. But if we look at my thing here, Lord Penderin, and I noticed that all of my PCs have completely misspelled it, but that's all right. He's a member of the Path of Echoes, and they're a pretty big deal. And he's on the city council. So would the mayor hire a tier 0 group to work for him? I'm not exactly sure I see that. I could definitely see hiring a tier 0 as expendable assets. But that's something I don't necessarily want to do. I don't want to pull the Shadowrun Mr. Johnson thing where he betrays them necessarily. John Harper even says in the Blades in the Dark book, like, don't do that. Which is fine, again, I've been there, done that with Shadowrun for years. It not necessarily appealing. So I don't necessarily want to go that way. And they also, kind of made enemies with him. He doesn't know that they're enemies necessarily, but, they did stop his assassin that he hired to kill Dunville. So that was rude of them. So it's a little odd to me that when that clock will complete, that he would like completely recruit them, make them a patron, that sort of thing. So I definitely want to do probably an antagonistic relationship between them. The easiest answer is to just say, well, why did you kill my assassin? Go kill the guy I hired the assassin for. But he hired a tier 4 assassin to do it. He broke a tier 4 assassin out of jail to do it. So I just don't see him believing necessarily that a tier 0 group could do it. They might could. They're PCs. They could totally do it. But I don't know if he believes that they could do it. So I probably what I'll end up doing is just, kind of maybe roll a random job and see what we end up getting. And see if I can work that in. If I can't, I will go with my sort of default, which is go kill Dunville. But I could also see that as a job, that they would need to work up to versus just go right in there and do it. So let's roll on these random tables. Let's see what we get. You can just sit here right here with me and figure this out. It'll be neat. So we've got this score chart. Who is the client? The client, I mean, we already know that, right? We know it's a noble or official under political there. The work itself, though, that we don't know. So I'm just going to roll this physical dice because I don't want to have to switch back to roll 20. I rolled a 1. Stalking or surveillance. Surveillance, that's not a word. Surveillance. That totally makes sense. I mean, that could work for Penderin, and it works for them, right? Because that's sort of their speciality. This could work. Let me write this down. Lord Penderin, as you may or may not remember from the other chart that I'm not showing, right there, Lord Penderin owes a favor to us. God, cannot speak. Elstera. So it could make sense that Penderin just has them follow Elstera. That could be a job. Of course, that means I got to figure out what Elstera is up to. She is, of course, a member of the Circle of the Flame. So I've sort of got the Circle, the Path, and the Church as sort of the big organizations, working in the background there. But I could come up with something for that, I think, to either just follow her, figure out what she's up to. I would need to make that into more of a score potential. Like stalking or surveillance doesn't sound like it necessarily leads to a score. The big issue is just like, when are you done? When are you done with that sort of job? So I'll definitely have to come up with like a goal that he wants to find out about her, so that they can do that. And they've got the skills to do that, right? Because Vond is a hunter, hound. So that would be a fairly easy job for them to do. All right, so that's that clock that I've got to think about, and that could trigger next time. Who knows? And then Fond, I think he's got a clock too, a Church of Ecstasy contact. They originally were going to try to make friends with Dunville, or at least work with him, figure out what his deal was. What did they want him killed? Maybe he could become a good ally for them. They changed their mind after they figured out that he was all into super arcane stuff, and they don't really know anything about that. So they just tried to make a regular contact. And so I, real quick, made up an NPC. This, wherever he is. Yes, Elder Cardera. So if they do make friends with him, he's another potential hire. He could hire them for something too. So it just kind of depends on which clock ends up getting finished first about which job they might do next. Or they might, have to deal with the red sashes or the ink rakes first. So I think we've got like four different avenues to go with that next session. We've got some red sash shenanigans. We've got ink rake shenanigans. We've got Lord Pendrain hiring them, maybe. Getting involved more with Elstera and the Circle, the Flame. Or we've got whatever Elder Why can't I remember his name? Cardera. Cardera. Why is that hard to say now? Or him. So I think that's pretty good. We're definitely moving forward, right? We've got 4 different ways to go. Yeah. Let me just read through my notes here, make sure. Oh, 2 other things that I remember from that session. Vaughn, as a devil's bargain, ended up stealing some papers along with the coin from Loria. So I kind of need to decide what those papers are. And that could be another instigation for that war with the Inkrakes. Right? Like if it was, I don't know, clandestine, secret, super awesome information that he stole, or it was just, an interview with her next person, talk about the town or whatever. So I got to think about that and how to make that devil's bargain definitely kick in. I could just take the sort of lame approach and tick up that clock that I'm going to end up probably making for the Inkrakes, just a couple notches because of that devil's bargain, But it would have to tie in somehow mechanically with those papers, or at least I would think it would need to. Like, why would that help the Inkrakes narrow down where they are based on the information they stole from the Inkrakes? Like, that's what doesn't quite make sense. So I need to think about those papers. That could be a totally other plot line. I'm probably not going to make it another plot line just because 4 is already a number that's too big. I don't necessarily want to go with 5 different plots going on. Let's keep it manageable. So I got to think about what those papers are. And that could be another clock, that they have to investigate or research. Probably a little easier than an assassin's notes, just because she's a reporter, so she probably takes good shorthand and stuff like that. And then the other thing was on their crew, they actually decided, right? They decided to go with espionage as their hunting ground thing. Which, and I will ask them about this because you should talk to your players. But it sounds to me like they're trying to go kind of like, I don't know, political rabble rousers. Like they're trying to make some changes because their enemies are Inkrakes. They're going for espionage as their thing, and they're getting involved with really high tier factions. I wasn't quite expecting them to go, all the way to those tier 4s. And that's gonna be tricky for them, maybe. So it definitely feels to me like they're sort of aiming in that political, rabble rouser, I don't know, instigators, rebels, direction. So I should probably be thinking along political lines. Like they seem to be wanting to make a difference in the city, which is cool with me. I think that's cool. And there's a bunch of different factions that sort of deal with that type of thing, like Scovos, not Scovos. The what are they called? We've got this faction sheet. I can look it up. The is it the Foghounds? I think. Is it the Foghounds? Anyway, there's a Scovarsi group in town because that war just ended. And so, yeah, and they're rebels, just basically they're a gang because they, why did I click on the dimmer? I think it's the Foghounds. It might be the Bill Hooks. I'll have to double check. Or maybe the Grinders. I don't know. The answer is I don't know who it is. I will look. But yeah, the Scovelanders, and there's also the Scovelander refugees here on the little fringe chart. That's interesting. Yeah, faction nodes, cool. So, I mean, there's definitely a way they could go with a sort of rebellion aspect. I don't know if they want to make them allies, whether they're enemies, what's exactly going on, but it could be something there. So that's definitely the way I'm thinking. My players seem to be leaning towards almost vigilantism, Spider-Manning, Batmaning around the town. So I'm definitely thinking, keep heading that direction. I will most definitely ask them that just to clarify. So that we're not working at cross purposes, because that's crazy. But yeah, so I think that's all the GM prep that we needed to do. I still need to roll a job for that Elder Cardera, but I want to make sure that doesn't cross over some other things with the ink rakes. And I still can't decide about those ink rakes, man. Are they at -2 or -3? Vote in the comments what you think sounds more interesting, or just put in the comments. I guess vote. You can definitely. Yeah. Illicit ilfid. Words are really hard today. That was actually one of my plans. He says in the chat that the Mug Reporter could publish a face sketch of Shane's character. I was actually going to do that. Actually, as the first thing for the next session was just a big picture of Edlund setting something on fire. Just because, or not a picture. That was another thing that I was looking at the book for. It was, do they have photography in Duskwall? I'm not sure. They have electricity and stuff like that, so it's a little past steampunk, but photography is a chemical reaction. It always has been until the digital age. And so that technology may not have, increased at the same, rate as electricity, because electricity, powers the lightning barriers and stuff like that. So it was sort of needed to advance farther than the real world. But photography didn't necessarily. Still got daguerreotypes. Probably said that wrong because it's a French word, which took a long period of time to develop, sometimes up to minutes. So it wouldn't necessarily be a picture of him. It could just be a sketch, a drawing. Shane, of course, makes the most sense. Vaughn makes the most sense just because she, could describe him to an artist or anything. But he wasn't the one that got arrested, so I just sort of thought it'd be funny to push Edlund forward as the front page, as it were. So I don't know. It sounds funny to me anyway. But that was something I was definitely planning. And that's definitely, because of their worsened reputation with the ink rakes. But yeah, just -2 or -3. Which should I go with? Which sounds more interesting? Which sounds more fun for the ink rakes? I don't know. I guess we'll find out. Hey, so that's it, I guess. Tune in next Thursday for the actual game session. We'll hopefully have people. I think Chris may actually not be able to join us for that session, so he'll just be in jail. That worked out. Not sure about that. I'm not sure if Jim will be joining us for that session either. So we'll stay loose. We'll stay limber. We'll throw some plots at them when they finish off their clocks, and we'll see where they go from there. It'll be pretty cool. So yeah, leave a comment, hit the like button, say hi. You can follow us on Twitter. That's pretty cool. And we've got a Patreon too. And if I get enough money in that Patreon, I will buy a new camera, and it'll be better than this one. Although it seemed to have worked mostly. I didn't notice any screw ups, but I wasn't always paying attention. I was looking at other stuff. So yeah, I guess that's it. Bye.